Oh man, I hate working on something for nothing. For no good reason. So I had a whole different video done and recorded and everything ready to go, but I kept getting interrupted, so I couldn't post it in time before I had to go to work. And I figured, well, I'll post it as soon as I get home. Well, guess what? I get home and a little bit more information about what I'm about to talk about came out, so I just scrapped the whole thing. And we'll start fresh. So, in a video that I did post, I talked about, of course, the Crisis on Infinite Earths final 2 episodes that came out, apparently to very low ratings, but what are you going to do? But the main thing there was in the second to last episode, Ezra Miller appeared as the Flash, of course, from Justice League and Batman vs. Superman and all that. And was supposed to be in his own Flash movie, but good Lord, how many different versions of that have been shopped around and losing directors and whatnot. But now it appears a Flash movie is definitely on the way and will concern Flashpoint. Now, the director, Andy Muschietti, had spoken to this very briefly and said that, well, it's not going to be the Flashpoint that everyone's expecting. Now, hopefully that just means there's some differences here, and it won't be as broad and sprawling as the original story, which was basically more of a Justice League story than just a Flash story. The Flash, of course, is very central to it, but all the cast of the Justice League would be in it, albeit in alternate forms. So you could have Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa as Aquaman and Wonder Woman going to war with each other. You'd have Cyborg there as basically taking the place of Superman as the main superhero. And, of course, Jeffrey Dean Morgan would be Batman, as he was Thomas Wayne in Batman vs. Superman, so on and so forth. And Superman himself, I guess they really would have to CGI Henry Cavill to make him really skinny in that. That version, but nevertheless, that's what you could do, but they need not involve all of that if they change the story up somewhat. But the basic idea of the Flash, desperate to change a history in which his mother was no longer murdered by his arch nemesis, Reverse Flash, and so he does this, but the consequences are, of course, the world is thrown into chaos and all that sort of thing. And it would also be a clever way in which they could reboot their DCEU and change things around, especially now Ben Affleck is no longer involved and will not be Batman anymore. This is a means by which they could have done this, where they introduce a new Batman. Now, in this case, I suppose it would be Robert Pattinson, I don't know, who would appear at the end when Flash believes he's restored the world to normal, but things are different, and you can have it where he's assimilated to the new reality, so he doesn't remember that Batman was different in the world he came from, and that sort of thing. And that would be kind of this clever little teaser thing at the end, and we're off to the races with a new cinematic universe for DC. It's a fan-driven thing because it certainly would be a very cool scene. But then again, it's kind of what everyone's expecting, so maybe that's not what it would be. But the deal with Jeffrey Dean Morgan is that he recently tweeted out, or maybe it was on Instagram, I forget which, this picture of himself wearing his mask from the comedian mask from his performance in Watchmen. And of course, there's no plans for a Watchmen sequel. I don't think they're going to do a Doomsday Clock movie. So he insinuated that he had a role coming up involving a mask. So, gee, what could it be? And then there was a post from Joe Manganiello. I'm sorry, I always get it wrong. Who was supposed to play Deathstroke. And he did a hashtag. He was out partying with Jason Momoa, and he did the hashtag Flashpoint, and then apparently deleted it. Oh, geez. All this happens at the same time, and then Muschietti makes a statement about it's going to be based on a Flashpoint of some sort. And so Now we have this, and no one had ever actually fully confirmed that Ezra Miller would be returning to the role. It was just assumed that this would be the case. The only thing we'd heard about is that he was pushing for a script that he had come up with no less than Grant Morrison, and apparently they passed on that. My guess is they're still sticking with this Flashpoint idea. Ezra Miller himself had always spoken very highly of the concept of the multiverse, and even so far back, when he was first cast, talking, I forget which outlet it was, but he did say that he would be interested in the idea of the two Flashes meeting, that being his Flash and the TV Flash of Grant Gustin. And now it's happened. So basically, there's a few details coming out about Mark Guggenheim explaining how all this happened. And I had seen earlier iterations of this. And so I'll start with that one. That was in my previous video. So, and I'm getting this from Cosmic Book News. So anyway, Mark Guggenheim says, I was really working hand in hand with Jim Lee. And Jim Lee, he gives a lot of credit to for being a middleman here for making this happen. And so he says, from the moment we found out this was a possibility to once we knew Grant Gustin was cool and on board with it, Ezra was on board with Crisis. I would send drafts of the scene to both Jim Lee and DC Entertainment's film vice president and Adam Schlegman, I guess is how you pronounce it, and we would just go back and forth. The trick with the scene is that I didn't want to, and they didn't want me to do anything that stepped on the toes of the Flashpoint movie that they're developing. Well, there you go. That's even a little bit more confirmation of what kind of Flash movie this film will be. And they says, you know, we worked really hard now not to step on any toes, but in a lot of ways that they're doing Flashpoint, actually this multiversal encounter sort of fits in with that narrative. And even as Ezra Miller's Flash is vanishing before Grant Gustin's Flash, he realizes this is a multiverse encounter. And he says, you know, I told Victor this was possible. And he fades away, Victor being Cyborg. And the Justice League sort of set it up, since they were closer in age to one another, that Cyborg and the Flash kind of become friends, you know. And so this is apparently has developed here. And also, he was never called the Flash in the movie. He didn't have a name for himself. And so this seems to suggest this is how he comes up with the name. I don't know if they're going to go forward with that. I don't know if they would bother with that in the movie or not, but yeah, you know, but maybe that was a step too far. I don't know, but they thought it would be silly enough to fit the scene, and that's what they did. So he continues, so we really worked hand in hand. Jim was really great about just making sure that all the parties were talking to each other, that nothing was getting stalled. He was a cheerleader when he needed to be, a diplomat when he needed to be. He really stepped up in every way one could do it. His enthusiasm really helped make this possible. Now, by all accounts, that's true that Jim Lee is often described as quite the gentleman. He doesn't really care to stir up a hornet's nest. So he's probably the perfect guy to be the middleman in all of this, because even though they're all owned by the same company, they just don't really communicate with one another. And this is kind of this rare occurrence where this has been achieved with their TV shows and now their movie thing. And they're trying to revive it in a big way and get this ball rolling. So unfortunately, CW does have a fan base, but it's very small. The ratings are very bad for those shows. The Flash show is the best of them, but even it is not really competitive compared to other shows. And but still, they need material for HBO Max, so I think that's breathed a little more life in these shows. And The Flash, I'm guessing, what didn't surprise me that one got renewed. This, again, it is its highest rated show. But I'm guessing the next season might be the last, or maybe one more. They could squeeze one out and do like they did with Arrow, and it'd be like a much shorter season to give it a good send-off and that sort of thing. But nevertheless, this is what they're making use of to build up their DC properties. And, well, I got to hand it to them to making the effort. So, that's good and all. Anyway, so that's what I originally did the video on. And then, well, I come home and I find this other little snippet more from Mark Guggenheim. He was talking to Variety, and so he describes the situation as this. He says, we were series wrapped on Arrow, and we were wrapped on the whole crossover. We were in post, and some episodes were locked, and some were soft locked. I got a phone call from Warner Brothers boss, Peter Roth, saying, I know you're locked, but can you put Ezra into the crossover? You do this now? Well, it should have been one of the first things. Because there were rumors that they wanted some DCEU connection with this big crossover, since they had cameos and images from people from past shows, you know, the people from the original Birds of Prey TV show, and people from the Batman movie in '89, and of course Burt Ward showed up, all this type of stuff. Of course, John Wesley Shipp in his old Flash outfit, all that stuff. And so it kept waiting for some, I figured it would just be footage from one of the films, either Justice League or BVS, whatever, and they would put that in there. Never did I expect this, but, well, here you go. So they were a little late in the game doing this, but no less than Peter Roth himself says, hey, could you fit him in there? And so Guggenheim said, yes. And he said, how? Your series wrapped, and you're wrapped on the crossover. And I said, yeah, I know. But if you're telling me Ezra Miller can be in the crossover, I can make it happen. So I called Eric Wallace, who is the showrunner of Flash, and he called up Grant Gustin, because the one thing that was our only concern was the thought we didn't want to do it unless Grant was 100% on board with it. And he was. And he was incredibly enthusiastic and on board. Yeah, because it's probably the most exciting aspect of the whole thing, because the crossover wasn't that good. Yeah, it wasn't. That's too bad. But this was, you know, very interesting, of course. And everybody lights up. I'm wondering what the streaming numbers will be on their site now, because the episode will be posted there. But anyway, so he's all enthusiastic about it. And then we got on the phone with Ezra Miller and told him the scene I had written, and he was completely into it. So, yeah, based on his comments previously, I would think he would be. He seemed like he was, you know, he liked the idea of those two characters meeting. And we just went. We put together a unit of the Flash crew on the Flash set, since Arrow's team, which had produced the rest of the hour, was gone. And much to our surprise, no one noticed. Yeah, this is the big... No one noticed Ezra Miller was in Vancouver, and no one leaked it from the crew, which we appreciate. So we were able to keep it a surprise. And yeah, it was, which is a rare thing in these days now. Of course, one could say as well, that's because no one cares. But someone does. So you would think, yeah, it would have leaked out, but it just didn't. And so there suddenly... there he was in the show. And so this, I think, leads to, yes, the Flashpoint movie will be happening. And as to what form it may take, we don't know. Now, Cosmic Book News speculates on this, saying that this information fits in with what he was told at Comic-Con, the previous one. In the Crisis was wanted to connect all the DC movies, TV, and so forth, and build up a lot of the DC properties, leading to the launch of HBO Max. I was actually told that Crisis would have something to do with a soft reboot of the DCEU, which Warner Brothers, basically mandating the use of Ezra Miller, hints at. Yeah, that has to be what it was, you know. And so it's leading to this, that Flashpoint is going to do this. There was some speculation that the Wonder Woman film might do it, but I'm thinking, based on what the leaks from that plot is, no, it's probably going to be the Flash movie. So, at Comic-Con, DC insiders also filled me in that the soft reboot may involve J.J. Abrams on Superman and Green Lantern, which will connect to his best bud, Matt Reeves' The Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, as well as James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. So here you go. He says, I've been told WB really wants to connect things for the fans, and that they want HBO Max to be at the center of it all. Well, I don't know. I guess, well, maybe CW is coming to an end and they don't know it. It'll all be on HBO Max. But anyway, among the changes already set in place by Crisis is that all the characters of the Arrowverse now exist on the same Earth. Yeah. And they tease the new HBO Max Green Lantern series, although that footage looked a lot like from the movie, but maybe it'll look the same. I don't know. But certainly, yeah, that's a hint at what's to come. They are working on the Green Lantern series for HBO Max and all that. So, well, there you go. They're building a new DCEU, and they're embracing their multiverse aspect of it to explain away any problems. But it may very well be that Robert Pattinson, if they're going to include the Batman aspect of Flashpoint, and if they could even get Ben Affleck to do a cameo to be the Batman at the beginning and then Robert Pattinson's the Batman at the end, that would fit in rather nicely with that whole thing. And so Pattinson will be the new Batman. This would also mean no more J.K. Simmons as Commissioner Gordon, but, well, what are you going to do? So there you go. That would be a way to integrate the Matt Reeves Batman movies into it without actually having to do anything between them. And they might sign up Pattinson for other appearances. I don't know. Or they could just explain that there is yet another Batman, but that's asking a bit much, I think, to have two competing Batman films, even if say they cast a new DCEU Batman with some other actor, and he only appears in crossovers and Justice League movies and that sort of thing. It's still kind of, because Batman's a huge player for the DC Comics, properties. So the idea of having two of them on movie screens, it might be a bit much for them to take. So I don't know. But anyway, there you go. There definitely is. Ezra Miller is still the Flash, and so that means he is yet another of the original cast actors still involved there. So to say that the DCU is completely abandoned, no, it's not. But they will be reforming it. So there you go. As for what does this mean for the Snyder Cut? I would like it to say that the Flashpoint would reveal that now Snyder Cut's version of Justice League is the canon one. But that would depend on the reception of it on HBO Max. If you can draw a lot of subscriptions based on just the announcement of that alone, that will tell them, well, maybe we'll want more of this. Because the thing about Snyder Cut, even if you get it, the story of it, it's incomplete. It's meant to have two more films at least, I believe, or maybe three. I'm trying to remember exactly. But so that's, a bit of a stumble block there. But if the enthusiasm and excitement for it is there, then they could branch out from there and just say, yeah, that's what happened. And then here comes this other movie. And you've got your franchises of Flash, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman, provided Flash does well, of course. And you would want to see more of them. The main thing they need to get off the ground as well is a Superman movie. It's time to poop or get off the pot. If you want Cavill, sign him up. Get to work on that. Set him up against Brainiac or something like that and get that ball rolling. Sitting around, this is way too long, and that's really sad. But it can happen. I mean, here's the Flash. He's waited a long time. The Flash movie should have been out already. Really, we should be talking about Flash 2 at this point, provided, of course, the movie did well. But it just didn't happen. I don't know what the deal was. It'd be interesting to see what other scripts they had, what might have been and that sort of thing. That's always interesting. But we'll probably never know. But hell, the original episode 9 of Star Wars leaked. And yeah, it's better than what came out. So who knows? Maybe we'll see. And maybe there never was a complete script, but story ideas, outlines, all that stuff would be cool to see. But anyway, so there you go. Flashpoint appears to be on the way. Thank you for watching and listening. Say, why not like and subscribe, and check out that link description below. That'll take you to my mini stores that have plenty of goodies for you. Yes, t-shirts, hats, mugs, all that good stuff. And of course, my Poor Man Mystery Science Theater treatment of old public domain movies, sci-fi, and horror can be yours to view over at sellfy.com/Nailsin. And of course, you can read my comic book, the Night Night comic book. Yes, based on my audio plays of Night Night. Yes, a parody of that Caped Crusader. You can now see him in action within the brilliant, colorful pages of his own comic book. So head over to indieplanet.com and get your copy of Night Night today. You can also listen to the Mr. Nailsin show, the Mr. Nailsin Show, over at radiomisfits.com. That's right. And you can watch my videos, yes, on my channel, elsewhere on BitChute. Yes, that's the Mr. Nailsin channel on BitChute.com.